but it wasn't a success. Most of the ones he picked up turned out to be on the game. He must give off a particular scent or something, since the brassers fairly flocked to him. It was a thing he noticed. Of course, it was against his principles to pay for it, and anyway, it wasn't much to write home about in his opinion. There was one who latched on to him, who wasn't a tart. She was a hot little redhead, halfway respectable. She had an office job in the Morris motor car factory up near Oxford, though she was Cockney to the bone. He didn't drive a car himself, so he only saw her if he went up on the train, or when she came down to the smoke the odd weekend for a bit of fun among the bright lights. Sapphire, she said her name was. Ooh la la. In the Dog and Bone one night he had a rummage in her handbag, just out of curiosity, while she was off powdering her nose, and came across an old ration book and found out her real name was Doris Huckett, from over Stepney way. That was the same night he realised, when he took a close look at it, that her hair was dyed. He should have known it was that bright, with that fake metallic shine, like the shine on the curve of a brand-new Morris Oxford mudguard. Doris, alias Sapphire, didn't last much longer than any of the others. In a place in Soho on New Year's Eve, she had a couple of baby shams too many and turned away, and spluttered with laughter at some remark he had made. He couldn't see anything funny in what he'd said. Drunk though she was, he took her out the lane behind the club and gave her a few smacks to teach her manners. Next morning, she rang up screaming and threatening to have him done for assault and battery, but nothing came of it. That was a thing he wouldn't stand for, being disrespected and made fun of. He had just linked in with an East End outfit and was doing some profitable robbing and the like. He had to get out, though, after knifing one of the younger blokes in the crew for mimicking his Irish accent. The Irish accent, it should be said, that he hadn't known he had until then. He was handy with a knife, and with shooters. He'd been in the army after all, and was pretty nifty with his fists too, when the need arose, even if he was a bantamweight. One of the Cray twins, Ronnie it was, took him on for a while as an enforcer, but his low stature was against him. That was why he liked Burma, despite the heat and the fever and all the rest of it. The fellows he'd been sent to kill down there were his own size or smaller. It wasn't easy making a living on Civvy Street, and he was getting desperate. He didn't mind admitting it, when Percy Anthropus came sashaying into his life. Percy was, well, it was hard to say what Percy was exactly. Heavy, pasty-faced, with a woman's hips and bruise-coloured pouches under his eyes, and a fat lower lip that sagged and turned a glistening shade of dark purple when he'd had a few. Brandy and port was his tipple, though he started the day with what he called a coupe, which, as Terry discovered, was just the French word for a glass of champagne. Percy took his champers ice-cold. He had a swizzle stick that was made of real gold. When Terry asked him what it was for, Percy looked at him in that way he did when he was pretending to be shocked, his eyes big and round as pennies and his mouth pursed into a crimped little circle that looked less like a mouth than a you-know-what, and said, "Dear boy, surely you wouldn't think of drinking champagne before noon with bubbles in it?" That was Percy. And you had to give it to him. It was he who saw Harry's potential and introduced him to his true vocation. Funny, the way it turned out, that his first paid-for target should be, of all people, Percy's old ma. She had a few bob in the bank, quite a few, in fact, and was threatening to cut Percy out of her will, on account of something he'd done or hadn't done. Percy, at his wits' end, had decided the only thing for it was to have her done over before she had time to ring up her solicitor, a complete stinker, who had it in for Percy, according to the man himself, and order him to bring her the aforementioned document so she could strike from it the name of her only son, the said Percival. Terry had come across Percy for the first time one foggy November night in the King's Head in Putney. Afterward it occurred to him that it hadn't been a chance encounter at all, and that Percy had picked him out deliberately, as a lad likely to help him in the matter of his inheritance. When, coming up to closing time, Percy started telling him about his problem with the mater. He really did talk like that, and how he intended to go about solving it. Terry thought